Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the council meeting. We're going to open with a moment of silent meditation and prayer and pledge of allegiance. Please keep the mayor and his family in your prayers after the passing of their son, Joe. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States
United States of America,
and to the republic that stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get started, after working with the mayor and the administration, we have decided, got everything set up to open the meetings to the public in June. We'll start having public meetings with people involved in June. We'll follow all the state guidelines and CDC guidelines while we're doing it. And as of tonight, after working with the mayor and the IT department, as of tonight, the meetings are being and will be, they'll be streaming. So the entrance to it will be on the website. We'll be posting it all over so people that want to watch the streaming of the meeting can get it wherever they are. So that'll be taking place as of tonight too. Mr. Pizzo, do we have anything canceled this evening?
Just one item, Mr. Polari. We received a request from council representing R&R Produce, which is item 8 on tonight's agenda. Raymond Richardson, R&R Produce, a conflict for their engineer, and therefore they've asked if the hearing on their application could be tabled to a date certain of June 14.
Okay, do we have a motion to continue that to June the 14th?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Who was the motion?
Ed was Takmajian.
Mr.
Ed seconded.
Takmajian.
And then Joe seconded it.
I seconded Joe Knowles.
Okay.
You won't have to worry about that next month, Deb. It'll be a little easier.
Okay, public comments we'll take as we're moving along, and at the end, we'll have everything brought up also. Approval council minutes for the meeting date, April 26, 2021. Do we have any corrections? If not, a motion would be in order.
I have a minor correction, Mr. President, even though I wasn't there. If you read page 5 of 13, the last paragraph and the last second sentence, it says, the township does not enter the home after the UNO has been issued, and ask if the mayor was corrected on this assumption. I think was it supposed to say the mayor was correct on this assumption?
I believe that's correct, Mr. Kisselback. That edit should be made. Page 5 of 13, Debbie, the next to the last line, the word corrected should be correct. Next to the last line on that page, the word corrected should be correct.
It's the last paragraph.
Yep, she has it. Any other changes, corrections? Hearing none, a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from April 26, 2021 as corrected.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
So it's 4-0-1.
Correction, but
Passed. Thank you. Number 4 on the agenda, consideration of an application for conditional use for telecommunication facility, New Singular Wireless PCS LLC. Road,
Doing business as.
I got to doing business AT&T Mobile, but row near 2356 Street Road, telecommunication facility, general commercial 2-39-93. Joe, do you have witnesses for that?
Yes, I've just admitted into our meeting counsel for New Singular. Allison, I always pronounce your last name incorrectly, Allison, so I'll let you say it.
Allison Fritches. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Allison. Do you have
Hello.
any witnesses who would be in our waiting room?
I do. So it'd be Sean Paul. And then Paul Chan. And Samantha Berman is probably in the waiting room as well. That's it.
Okay, great. Could you, I guess as a matter of some preliminary housekeeping for those witnesses, could you give me their names as well as their expertise?
Absolutely. Samantha Berman, who will be testifying last night, she's the site acquisition consultant for Jacobs Engineering, who is a site vendor for AT&T. Sean Paul is our radio frequency design expert, and I'll ask that he be qualified as an expert witness as well. And Paul Chan is our civil engineer, who will testify to the drawings and the structural report. And I'll also ask that he be qualified as an expert in civil engineering.
Very good.
Should we swear them in, Joe?
Sure. As to Ms. Berman, Mr. Paul, and Mr. Chan, do each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
Sorry, I apologize, I was muted. I said I do.
I do.
Very good. And Ms. Berman, it shows that she's still connected
Yeah,
to audio.
she had a family emergency tonight, so she's timed to come on last. If she can't talk right now, when she comes on, I'll make sure that she's sworn, if that's okay, Mr. Pizzo. I apologize.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, would you care to explain to the board what it is that you're doing and what the relief is that you're seeking?
Absolutely. So we are here tonight asking for a conditional use application for what we call a small cell installation within the public right-of-way near the address at 2356 Street Road. This is a little different than your normal tower applications, and the township's ordinance right now actually doesn't speak to these small cells. It speaks to towers. So, but the towers are permitted by conditional use in this district. We're just doing something much smaller. It's actually we think it's a better installation than the big towers that you see all over the place. So what we're looking to do is replace an existing Verizon light pole at the address I mentioned with a new utility pole. It'll be another wooden utility pole. The pole right now is at, we're going to be extending the pole 10 feet from where it is right now. And then with the antenna on top, it'll be an additional 2 inches. So we're looking for an overall height of approximately 45 feet, a little bit over 45 feet. All the equipment, there's going to be an equipment shroud on the side of the pole where all the equipment is going to be housed. There'll be absolutely no ground improvements. At the bottom, it'll just be a light pole with a telecommunications facility on top. And that's what, these are becoming more prevalent because of where the need is. And obviously, it's a better option for, the public, for even for the provider when it's trying to get into, where it needs to serve rather than the big 150-foot towers. That's what we're looking to do here tonight. Like I said, it's permitted by conditional use. We did receive a favorable recommendation from your planning commission back in March. We have in our exhibit package, which I did present, I did send to the township, and I do have our experts ready to bring up on screen, testify to them. There's a photo simulation at the end, which shows exactly what this will look like, what's existing, what is proposed. We have our radio frequency design report, which Mr. Paul would testify to, which talks about, why we need this site, why AT&T needs the specific site, and what will happen if we aren't able to install the site. And as an offer of proof, Mr. Pisa, he would testify that without this site, what we're doing is we are there's a capacity issue there, which means that there's macro sites in the surrounding area that are getting to a level of exhaustion, and we need some additional sites to relieve that exhaustion. And as you know, with everyone working from home and with all the different needs of, and the live streaming is becoming more of a service need, and therefore AT&T is looking to put these small cells in different places to address that need. He also would testify to emissions report, which he would testify that we are guided, we are regulated by the FCC, that we can have a certain level of emissions over what the FCC allows. He would testify that our levels are way below what we're permitted to do with this small cell, so we're compliant with those regulations. He would testify to a non-interference report, meaning that these radio channels not interfere with your cable channels or things of that nature. And if they did, in the very rare event that they did, AT&T is mandated by its license with the FCC to fix that problem if there was a problem. And Mr. Chan would testify to his structural analysis that's included in your packets, that what we're looking to put on this pole, that the pole can handle the weight of the antenna and the equipment, essentially.
Very good.
Did you say that this is a newer concept? Is that correct? Is this a new concept as far as telecommunications and communications?
I think it's a newer concept. I would say, and Sean can correct me, I would say last 5 years we've started seeing these, but they're becoming more and more prevalent, especially in residential areas, Councilman, where we can't put these towers, obviously, in these residential areas. This one is in a business area, but you'll see these a lot, I think, if they come before the board, in more residential areas, replacing the utility poles to address the need in those areas.
Would this be replacing the larger towers, or is this an adjunct to it?
This is going to work with the larger tower. This actually, the area where this serves, it's a smaller area than the bigger towers. This would be added and add on to the towers. It would work with the towers to provide the service, but it wouldn't eliminate the need for one of the existing towers.
If you have a small area that has a deficiency, this would be directed for that specific area, correct?
That's correct, and it works with other small cells that may be in the area to address the different pockets, so to speak, where the need is. But AT&T needs additional service, and this is what they're looking to do. But it won't be replacing a tower.
Thank you.
Are these just for AT&T, or are they going to also be shared with other companies?
So this would just be for AT&T. I think, as Mr. Chan would testify to, there is the ability to co-locate. However, you usually don't see that happening because the providers would have to be below where our antennas are, and that height usually doesn't work for them.
So the thing with this is that you would have one for yours. Verizon can get them for everybody's going to want these towers, and we're going to have our whole township with these pole towers everywhere in every residential neighborhood. We could have hundreds of them by the time we get done. If there's pockets where you can't get cell coverage now, you're going to have these all over Bensalem, all through the residential neighborhoods, and it's going to be, I've never seen one, so to me, I'm just looking at it as more and more poles with more and more wires and more antennas and more to go wrong. That's the way I see this as to me, it doesn't make sense. Do anybody else on council have a meeting, any questions right now? If not, we can go through the letter from T&M.
So did she say we were going to see a picture of one of these on her presentation?
Alan?
Sure, I have a full presentation.
Yeah, I'd like to see the presentation.
I would too.
Go from there.
I don't know what it looks like, so.
I can, would it be you, Allison, or one of your experts who would be able to put the exhibit?
If Mr. Sean Paul could share his screen, he has everything ready to go.
Okay.
Allison, bear with me, and council, please bear with me. I apologize. My my email crashed, so I'm trying to recover right now. Does Paul Chen have the photo simulation available by chance? If not, if you could just bear with me for 1 second here, I can pull it up.
I don't have the photo simulations.
Okay.
And usually this would be something that would be in the packet that we would be able to see ahead of time and have questions for, not
Okay.
5 minutes into the meeting.
Yep.
There was a
And I-
sketch. There is a
The
sketch in the
photos
back.
were sent, and we do have those.
I do have, and I apologize. I am I was able to recover, and I'm going to be sharing my screen here. If somebody is able to please confirm that you're able to see my screen.
We are?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, excellent. Allison, I'll let you go ahead and explain these photo simulations if you'd like.
No, I mean, if the council will allow me to, I'd like to go through the full testimony if I could. Mr. Solicitor, if that's okay with you,
Certainly.
so that we can make a record. Well, I'll start, Mr. Paul, why don't we start with Exhibit A4. I'm going to have to qualify you as an expert in radio design engineering. So can you just state your name again for the record and let us know where you're employed, please, Mr. Paul?
Absolutely. My name is Sean Paul. That's S-H-A-U-N. Last name is Paul, P-A-U-L. I am located at 22 West Eppley Drive. That's E-P-P-L-E-Y Drive. That's in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, 17015. I provide consulting services by RF Services to AT&T. I have been in the industry since 2000, actually, for 21 years. I have remained employed in the industry that entire time. I have worked for Nextel partners, Sprint, Ericsson. I performed consulting tasks for T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T. I've been before boards such as yourself in Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, Delaware. I'm probably missing a few, and I've been before zoning hearing boards and county boards, municipality boards in excess of 300 times in my career. Have had various responsibilities in the wireless industry, from designing wireless networks for areas that currently have zero coverage to basically designing capacity needs and performance issues. So my responsibility, or I should say my role, is to review all of the proposed documents, create the documents relating to the radio frequency aspect. And so AT&T's radio frequency engineer would work with Samantha, who is the site acquisition, in identifying a location where there is a need, whether that need be driven by capacity or whether it be coverage related. In the case of this application, it is driven by capacity. And then Samantha and the radio frequency engineer from AT&T would decide on which pole or which location is best suited to meet the coverage objective or capacity objective And then the documentation would be created by myself and then presented to members such as yourself this evening. So
I want to stop you right there. I just want to go back a little bit. First, I want to, your CV is labeled Exhibit A4 in this packet, and I do apologize to council if you didn't get them. We did send these packets, well in advance of the meeting. We didn't send them last month as well, but I apologize if you didn't get them. And this is your CV, Mr. Paul, is that correct?
that is correct, yes.
Okay. And at this point, Mr. Solicitor, I'd like to qualify him as an expert in radio frequency design engineering, if I could.
He will be accepted as such.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if we could pull up Exhibit A7, Mr. Paul. Can you go through this exhibit and explain to the board what this shows?
Sure, absolutely. A7 contains 5 pages, one of which is the cover sheet. The page number 2 that I have displayed before you is titled Best Serving Sector Coverage Without the Proposed Site. Basically, this is a coverage map that has been created. I actually created this using the AT&T software tool, which is an industry standard software tool. The software tool is referred to as a propagation tool or a modeling tool. And essentially what that tool does is it takes into consideration the ground elevation, the clutter types for a specific area, and clutter would be, more specifically, would be the type of buildings, whether it be residential or commercial or industrial, also the heights of those buildings, in addition to areas that are forests or open bodies of water, and takes those into account when generating these coverage maps. In addition to the ground elevation and the clutter, the propagation software also takes into consideration the configurations of AT&T's existing sites, and then also the proposed facility. One thing that AT&T and really any wireless carrier would never want to do is to propose a facility and build a facility without that proposed facility meeting its objective, the coverage objective. It would be a very costly mistake, and certainly the wireless carriers, and in this case AT&T, would prefer not to lose money. So this software tool is literally the gold of the radio frequency engineering department, and they have spent millions of dollars nationwide to ensure its accuracy. It is a model, so there is a margin of error, very small, but the model itself is tuned using drive test data, using information obtained from potentially the handsets of the customers, and it is constantly adjusted. So essentially what you have before you here, and again titled Best Serving Sector Coverage Without Proposed Site, you will see in the center of the map the proposed location. That is the pole that we're before you this evening regarding. And then surrounding the proposed location, you will see 3 other I'll say dots, and those locations, Dunks Ferry, Stanwood, and then this site labeled PAL 06749 Foxtrot. Those are AT&T's existing facilities surrounding the proposed location. This coverage map, which has multiple colors on it, is depicting where each one of those existing sites are the best server. So for instance, if I'm an AT&T customer and I'm in the tan or beige color area, I would be served by the Dunks Ferry and tower, specifically the Alpha sector. And furthermore, if I were to be in the light purple area, hopefully you're able to see my mouse moving, but if I were to be in this location as an AT&T customer today, I would be best served by the Stanwood facility, existing facility, and specifically the Gamma sector, or sector number 3, if you will.
Can I ask you to hold on for a minute?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so sorry.
Were any of these sent to us? I don't see us have any of these articles that you're putting out here. We should have had these in and been able to review them along with you, not looking on a screen I can barely see from where I sit. Usually, everything that you have to put for your case is usually put together in one package for us to review. Did you send that over to the township?
We did.
Who did you send it
did.
to?
I sent it to Ms. Gallagher, Mr. Pizzo, and Ms. McCrane, I believe it was. And I sent it in the same share file. I sent it to Mr. Paul to present the exhibits.
Yeah, Mr. Blair, we received that at Friday, 3:30.
You what?
It came via email.
We did. I can tell you the date that I sent it, though. I sent it previously as well. We were supposed to be on last month, and we weren't. So I did send it I sent it as a reminder last week, but I did send it the prior month as well.
Is that the stuff that just came through yesterday in an email?
I had sent it previous to Friday I sent it last month, the same exact exhibit packet.
As an email, right?
All of this was sent to
Virtual.
us on Friday for our review with our packets. It was emailed out to us from Debbie McBreen.
Email, yeah.
Okay. It was emailed to you last minute when you sent it to us in the afternoon. So, okay. Go ahead. You can continue.
I do want to point out, I sent it last month as well. I just want the council to know that I sent it on Friday to say, here it is again if you need it, but I did send it last month as well. Just want the council to be aware of that. I don't do things last minute like that. Just want you to be aware. Okay, Mr. Paul, I think you're explaining what the different items on the screen represent.
Correct.
Could you explain for the board how, again, what they are and how the proposed location is interacting with those different objects on the board?
Sure, absolutely. So as I was mentioning, the map that's displayed before you would represent the AT&T's existing coverage specifically based upon the best serving sector. The issue that we have in this immediate area where the proposed facility is a substantial amount of retail locations and a fairly concentrated area where AT&T customers would be using their devices. And so the need is essentially to provide, I believe that one of the questions earlier was, would this proposed facility eliminate the need for the existing facilities? The answer is no. This facility would provide a very laser focused, if you will, amount of coverage that would provide offload to the adjacent AT&T facilities. And those existing facilities have a relatively larger coverage area, and so the user demand has increased exponentially over the last several years and continues to grow at a very rapid pace. And so AT&T is proposing a small cell facility because AT&T feels that it really conforms with the surrounding environment. These poles are designed to really not be obvious. There's a single antenna that's installed on top of the pole, which is approximately about the same diameter of the pole itself. The equipment is painted to match the pole. And so quite honestly, I'm sure you've very likely have driven by a small cell and not have even realized it. They are much different than what are referred to as macro facilities, which are monopoles or lattice towers, anywhere from 80 feet in height to upwards to 300-400 feet in height in some cases. And they typically have at least 9 antennas installed, in some cases even upwards to 12, just for AT&T. And usually there's co-location on those. So this map is representing what the existing coverage looks like today, and the concern is to be able to provide capacity relief to the adjacent facilities that are currently reaching a point of exhaust, and the proposed facility would do so, and I changed to page number 3, which is a new coverage map titled Best Serving Sector Coverage with Proposed Site. Now, the proposed facility, you can see there's a new color that's introduced to this map, and that is the pink color, and that is the coverage area with the proposed facility. So I will toggle back and forth just quickly here so that you can see that the pink coverage does provide coverage to the immediate area, which again is very targeted specifically because of the retail and just overall volume of traffic that's generated from this area. And this facility would become the dominant server for all AT&T customers and businesses that are within that pink shaded area. And ultimately, the small cells will allow AT&T to relieve the capacity that's existing today on the macro facilities, which is ultimately affecting the customers that are anywhere within the serving area. So anywhere within the TAN area, customers would be impacted for being able to place calls, being able to use data, texting, et cetera, based on the demand. So I'll pause there for a moment to see if there's any questions, or Allison, if you have any other comments that you would like me to address.
I want to just briefly talk with Mr. Paul. You mentioned
Allison, before you go, does anyone have any questions in regard to what Mr. Paul has testified to so far?
I'm curious, and maybe now is not the right point in your presentation, so if you find that you can answer this later, that's okay, but why this particular location? It's interesting. We've had a proposal for a tower in this site in the past, one that was not well engineered, or alternatives were not well desired or determined ahead of time. Not this same concept of a small cell tower, but why this particular location, and I mean very specifically why this pole as opposed to something else in this general area?
Sure, it's an excellent question. And so as mentioned, this is a small cell application. As the name would imply, not only is it physically smaller in size respective to the height of the structure and also the equipment, but the area of coverage is also smaller. These small cells operate at a reduced transmit power in comparison to what is referred to as the macro facility. As I mentioned, those are the AT&T facilities that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years, usually on monopoles, lattice towers, and rooftops, water tanks, etc. The reason for the location is driven by the need. So as I mentioned earlier, the AT&T radio frequency engineer evaluates the issues that are currently existing in the network and determines where the best suited location would be for a new facility, again, using that modeling software. Now, when the AT&T radio frequency engineer provides that information to the site acquisition individual, they are tasked then with going out and trying to determine or locate facilities that would accommodate AT&T's need. So obviously, some of the criteria that goes into that is location, number one, and number two, there's an interested landlord. Number three, ideally, if there's an existing structure for co-location, AT&T would prefer that simply because it's usually recommended by ordinances to try and co-locate. And so basically those factors are taken into consideration. With the proposed facility here, it is a co-location, even though the pole will be extended to be able to accommodate AT&T's antennas. And the specific pole, how that was chosen is because the other poles that are along this stretch of road within the proximity of where the site needs to be are not feasible because of the power equipment that's installed on them, such as transformers and various other equipment. So Pico and or Verizon would not permit AT&T to co-locate on those other poles simply because they're not capable of accommodating AT&T's equipment and they would not be permitted use by the utilities. Did I answer your question, sir?
I think so, and I just want to make sure I fully understand. So you're saying that the location is really driven by the need. First, it's an engineering analysis using the modeling software, and then after that, it goes down to, in that area, what locations meet the site criteria, have the desirable features, locations, etc., until an appropriate site is selected.
That is exactly correct. You did an excellent job summarizing that. And one point to mention, if I didn't do so already, is proximity is really the key as it relates to alleviating the capacity needs. The closer the AT&T customer is to the facility, the better their coverage will be. And also in building coverage, having a facility directly across the road, for example, Kohl's in this case, would significantly improve the in-building coverage. And so proximity is very much a factor, but it all begins with the radio frequency engineer identifying where a facility is needed. And in the case of the small cells, there's very little, I'll say, wiggle room, for lack of a better word, simply because they have a smaller footprint. They operate at lower transmit powers, and so being as close to the bulk of the area of usage, or where the subscribers would typically be using their device, is very, very critical. And this proposed facility is fairly centralized to the existing 3 AT&T facilities that are shown here, and obviously AT&T has other facilities that are not represented on this map, just for the sake of being able to see the granularity of the roads and whatnot. So,
Well, to that end, Mr. Paul,
yes.
the map, the before and after maps have a variety of colors, but there's no color key per se. Is the gray area that's shown, is that an area with no coverage, or is that an area of coverage that's being provided by the existing Stanwood antenna?
That's also an excellent question, and I'll briefly try to explain this map. To answer your question, sir, that gray area, or on my screen it shows as a very light purple, but we'll call it gray. That would be an area that is served by the existing Stanwood tower. The difference between the colors here, and you are correct, there is no legend, and that's simply because there are multiple colors. But if you look at the Stanwood facility, for example, this is a facility that's configured with what's referred to as 3 sectors. So AT&T and other wireless carriers traditionally configure their sites with 3 sectors, meaning there are antennas that are facing to the northeast, antennas that are facing to the southeast, and then antennas that are facing, in this case, primarily west. The orientation of these antennas is really dictated by the areas that are populated or where there's usage. So each one of these colors that are shown here on the map correlate to a specific sector of each one of the facilities. If we go to the Dunks Ferry facility, you can see the beta sector, which is southeast. That is blue. That area of coverage is shaded as blue, as is the actual pie shape, which is a symbol to represent the sector and the directionality of that sector. And so basically doing the sectorized configuration provides the wireless carriers, in this case AT&T, the ability to distribute traffic a little bit more evenly and dimension its network so that one antenna is not absorbing all of the traffic because there's equipment limitations within the facility. So in the absence of actually having a legend per se, the legend would be each one of these symbols or sectors, the color that's shown within that pie, it correlates to the area where that sector would be the best server or the dominant server. Does that answer your question?
It does. So then going back to the before coverage map, the area that surrounds the proposed location does in fact have coverage. It's being provided either by the brown sector coming out of the Dunks Ferry Tower, or the gray sector coming out of the Stanwood Tower, and to some extent by the brown area coming out of the third tower shown on your propagation map. And in some cases, there's overlap among and between those three those 3 antennas in terms of the area that's being provided coverage. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
So the gray, just to be clear, doesn't represent, these are areas where there's no coverage. To the contrary, gray, all of the colored areas shown on this map are currently being provided coverage by one of those 3 antennas. Is that correct?
That is correct. The only comment I would like to add to that statement, sir, is the fact that in a congested wireless network where the surrounding facilities have reached a point of exhaust, where they're no longer able to support additional customers or the customers' demands, whether it be surfing the web, watching Netflix, whatever the customer is doing. In a case where there is a wireless network that is capacity starved, it would essentially be the equivalency of not having coverage. So once a wireless network reaches its max capacity, that is the equivalency of not having coverage, because a customer that is trying to gain access to the network, if the network's congested, would be denied. That being said, if a customer were to go to the Kohl's parking lot, hypothetically speaking, at 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm sure they would probably, in most cases, be fine. However, if they're at the Kohl's parking lot during quote-unquote rush hour, they very well may be denied access to the network simply because of the volume of congestion.
Understood. This exhibit, however, doesn't show the areas that are capacity starved or capacity exhausted. What this area is showing is, right now, 3 towers are providing coverage to this area, and when you add the small cell, if you'd go to the next exhibit, please,
Yes,
we're now
absolutely.
going to overlap that area with the new purple area that's going to be providing additional coverage, not coverage where there's not already an area. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't believe this exhibit, and correct me if I'm wrong, shows the underlying premise that the purple area is otherwise a capacity-starved or capacity-exhausted area.
That's correct. The coverage map itself does not, however, with my testimony based upon understanding the necessity of this site from working with the AT&T radio frequency engineer, my testimony would be that the area where the proposed facility is located is currently at a point of capacity exhaust, approaching, and in some cases at. If I were to provide a quote-unquote coverage map, it would look as though everything's covered simply because there is adequate radio RF, radio frequency energy there. However, these maps are being presented simply to better illustrate to the board that the proposed facility will be a dominant server, and more especially in an area that is heavily congested in terms of traffic, meaning subscribers. And to better explain to the board as to what the proposed facility would provide. Like I said, if I showed a coverage map similar to that, if you went out to the AT&T's website to see if you have coverage at your home, this entire map would show as very well covered. But those coverage maps and that type of coverage map layer does not represent the capacity issues, if that makes sense.
Certainly, and inasmuch as Exhibit A7 doesn't demonstrate it, do we have, other than your testimony, do we have a copy of a report or a study, an analysis, an exhibit, a map, what have you, that shows the fact that this area, what I'll call the purple area on Exhibit A7, is in fact a capacity-starved or a capacity-exhausted area?
Yeah, so respective to a map, there really is no way to truly represent that, simply because AT&T is not able to show this specific customer's location respective to their experience, especially in cases where customers are not able to gain access to the network. And a lot of cases such as those, AT&T would not even know a customer was attempting to access the network. But to answer your question, sir, there is not I have not prepared a map, nor would I necessarily be able to represent the attempts to gain access to the network, the failures, the throughput speeds. However, AT&T does collect data in terms of the performance for each one of these sectors that I mentioned earlier, and they're able to determine when the heaviest levels of congestion are, and certainly AT&T knows their equipment limitations and also spectrum limitations. And so that is how the decisions are made by AT&T to invest monies into a certain area to provide that capacity relief. Unfortunately, a lot of times those metrics that are being used that show a sector and or a network that's reaching a point of exhaust don't necessarily always precisely pinpoint exactly where, and that's where the radio frequency engineer for AT&T has to be familiarized with the area and also basically put together a jigsaw puzzle, if you will, in terms of placing these small cells throughout the areas where the relief is needed. And furthermore, a small cell that's existing today, which is shown on this coverage map, and the existing and before and after coverage map is located here, which is PAL 06749. And that facility is on air. And so the proposed facility will basically provide the contiguous capacity relief coverage that is needed to basically offload the existing macro facilities, which is the Stanwood to the northeast and the Dunks Ferry that is southwest.
So the underlying data then that deals with the coverage limitations and coverage exhaust, if I understand your testimony, it's largely colloquial. There's no, it's not quantifiable. It's done off of AT&T customer complaints. Is that a fair statement?
That would be a fair statement. I mean, certainly customer complaints contribute to that. But yes, I mean, AT&T's engineering department includes various facets of the organization, such as spectrum engineers, capacity engineers, radio frequency engineers, optimization engineers, and collectively as a whole, they work together to determine which sites are, I'll say, reaching a point of exhaust or at a point of exhaust. So,
right.
but yes.
And is that analysis? I'll ask you, or I'll ask Allison. Is that analysis that AT&T has made to make the initial determination that this area is at its capacity, that it requires the additional capacity? Is there some analysis that's been performed that's a part of the exhibits or a part of the testimony that we're going to hear this evening, other than AT&T did it?
Yeah. So, Allison, if you're okay, I mean, I can answer this. I mean, that since that would fall into my realm or responsibilities, I would say there is no exhibit that will be presented this evening that represents that information, simply because the data that is used to make the decisions of adding additional facilities is multiple data sources and points, and it's hard to, like I said, quantify to be able to represent it on a map. It's more or less statistical data that's used and forecasted data in terms of where AT&T foresees the usage being in the near future or in the distant future. And so, to answer your question, sir, there is nothing specific in the exhibits that you're going to see this evening that would give you necessarily something to quantify. It would solely be based upon my testimony, based on my interactions with the AT&T radio frequency engineer, my review, my expertise, and essentially the demand that I think we're all aware of by wireless consumers in terms of abandoning their home phones, abandoning their computers in some cases, or their internet at home, and going to one device exclusively, which is the handheld device, the wireless device. And so
So what we have then is your opinion. We don't have any of the statistical data. We don't have any of the forecasting data. We don't have any of the reports, analyses, or summaries that were done by anyone within AT&T. We have your testimony based on your review of that data, as well as your knowledge and expertise within the field.
yes, sir, that would be a true statement.
Thank you.
So AT&T says so we're supposed to believe that without seeing any of the data. So we have that from AT&T, and then every other mobile carrier is going to want the same things. By the time we get done, and if it's not sharing on these poles, we're going to have hundreds plus of poles all over in all the neighborhoods, because there might be a little no coverage here, no coverage there. And we're expected to just go on the word AT&T says, not giving us the actual data. I mean, when we see cell towers, we get actual data of things, of what's going on, what the coverages are, what the numbers are, and so forth and so on. I have trouble seeing what was sent over to me on my cell phone, so I mean, it's hard for me to see all this stuff. I tried to bring it up over the weekend. I just tried again, and I can see little bits and pieces, but I can't get what that whole picture goes, and if I had that in front of me, I could follow along with what you're looking to do. Whose fault that is, we'll figure that out, what's going on. But when we get presentations like this, just like we do cell towers and when they're putting them on top of buildings, we get all the figures, all the numbers. We need to see what's going on to make it sure it's right for the people in our neighborhoods. We want to make sure they have coverages. We want to make sure that they're able to get phone calls, because some neighborhoods you got good coverage, some you don't. Some you have coverage good at night, some not during the day. But for us to make good decisions, we should have these figures and numbers and all these reports in front of us so that we can see those. If we were in person and not on Zoom, you would have had to bring a copy of those for each one of our members of council. That's just my opinion.
But to
But wait, Mr.
if I could,
Hold on, Jess.
before we go on, Jess, just to put some clarity, the propagation maps that we were provided, as I asked Mr. Paul earlier, traditionally, when the township in a conditional use hearing for a new cell tower would be provided propagation maps that would show the before and after coverage, and typically that would show these are areas that are not being served or have poor coverage, and with the installation and operation of the new tower, here's the new map that shows how the coverage would be improved. As we went through earlier on with Mr. Paul's testimony, this map doesn't provide that information. This map shows that there is currently coverage. This is the area that the new cell tower will provide the enhanced coverage to, but it's not telling the council the underlying premise of this installation, which is we have an area that's not being served, or we have an area in this case, in the case of the small cell, that's being overwhelmed. And so the before and after this exhibit is to some extent putting the rabbit in the hat. It's saying, okay, when we build the new cell, here's this purple area, but we're not being given, as Mr. Polari's saying, we're not being given the underlying data that creates the premise of there is a structural, or if you will, there is a systemic, a capacity stress, a capacity starved, a capacity exhausted, whatever the proper term is, area to begin with. That we're being asked to take just purely on testimony. And that is the concern that Mr. Polari's expressing, that the exhibits that we have don't demonstrate the underlying need. At this point, at least so far in this presentation, we have Mr. Paul's testimony that there is a need, but nothing beyond that from AT&T to demonstrate it. One other question before you go, Mr. Sloan, and that is, you mentioned earlier that this would be a co-location. It's not going to be a co-location in the sense that there will be two cellular carriers, correct? Or will there be a second cellular carrier on this pole?
As of right now, there's no new cell carrier proposed on this pole. When we say co-location, we mean co-locating with the utility.
And that's what I assumed, but you just used a phrase that as an attorney gives me pause, which is as of right now. Is this site capable of being expanded to take on a second cellular carrier as well as the public utilities?
Yes, I will get Mr. Chan will testify that it could, yes, that it could structurally.
Okay, Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Sloan. I just wanted to make sure that was clear what Mr. Polari was saying.
Okay, Jess, go ahead.
Mr. Paul, I guess a lot of the questions here are garnered around the need, which in my view, and please, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the problem is that there's insufficient bandwidth to handle peak volume. And I'm wondering if you can help to explain that, because I think that's where things are getting lost in translation. You've been accepted as an expert witness by this board. So, we take your testimony very seriously and with all due credit. So I'm hoping that you can help to enlighten and educate everybody on exactly how determination that there's insufficient bandwidth or insufficient capacity at these peak volumes. Again, it's not that there's no coverage. That doesn't necessarily seem to be the issue at hand here. It's that the existing coverage does not have sufficient capacity to handle the volume of traffic.
Yes, that is correct. And so the contributing factors that would go into play in respect to how AT&T or any wireless carrier ends up in this situation is the frequencies are licensed by the FCC, and AT&T holds those licenses, and the frequencies are limited in terms of the amount of frequencies. So there are really two components, actually three components that contribute to exhausting a wireless network. One is the demand, and as I mentioned before, the demand is driven based upon the AT&T customer. A customer that is watching a movie via Netflix on their device requires a significantly larger bandwidth than a customer that would be sending a text or using their phone. The bandwidth or the demand of the bandwidth would then correlate to the amount of spectrum that AT&T has available to be able to use. So basically, probably the best analogy is a golf ball through a garden hose. The golf ball being the AT&T customer demand, meaning trying to gain access or retain access on the wireless network, and the garden hose obviously being the limiting factors associated with the spectrum and also with the physical equipment. So the physical equipment that is installed in these facilities does have a limitation in terms of how many subscribers or sessions, if you will, are able to be simultaneously supported by that equipment. So really the two limiting factors are the equipment and also the spectrum. And then the demand would be the other variable that contributes to the need. Now AT&T has to reuse their frequencies at each and every single one of these facilities. So historically speaking, 20 years ago, the wireless carriers would build their facilities as high as possible on tall structures, on mountainsides, and be able to strive to provide a very large area of coverage with as few facilities as possible. That was 20 years ago. What happened is those large facilities or macro facilities hit the limitation in terms of the amount of users those facilities could support because of either equipment limitations or because of spectrum limitations. I can assure you that AT&T has exhausted all possibilities with their existing facilities within this area, meaning that if AT&T was capable of adding additional capacity to the existing macro facilities, they absolutely would have by now. And the reason why is because regardless if the proposed facility is a small cell or if it's a macro facility, there's cost associated with that. And so AT&T would ideally try to avoid spending money unnecessarily unless AT&T is concerned about the existing network customer experience, the customer's ability to gain access to the network, which is referred to as reliable service, which is one of the many obligations AT&T has by the federal government as a FCC license holder. So to answer the question, how these situations occur is out of AT&T's control. AT&T is not able to dictate or determine what type of usage the customers are going to be using their handsets for, or where they're going to be using their handsets. AT&T is obligated to provide reliable coverage and necessarily does not create these issues themselves per se. It's an issue. It's a hardship that is created by the ever-growing exponential customer demand on the wireless networks.
And would you agree that it's also kind of a symptom of the evolution of this technology, such that the memory and the capacity need has been growing almost exponentially anyway? I mean, we're not using dial-up America Online anymore. We're using high-speed internet and cellular wireless because of the capability of this high-speed connection.
Yes, I would agree with that, absolutely. And you know, speculatively speaking, if the trend continues as it has in past years, yes, the growth will be exponential. As I mentioned in my earlier testimony, many individuals are abandoning their home phones. Over 50% of homes right now in America have abandoned their home phone, and they're using a cellular device for all purposes of communication. And the ever-growing trend now is individuals canceling their home internet services because the wireless carriers, including AT&T, have come out with the all-you-can-eat plans again, which is basically unlimited data. And so, you know, customers are really beginning to use that quite heavily with a one-stop shop device for all of their needs that was previously spread across 3 or 4 different outlets to be able to obtain their information or communication. So,
all the things that all the things that you're telling us lend itself to a lack of service. So you're suggesting that be the case, but there has to be some type of criteria that AT&T has used or intends to use to provide that information to anyone who would be interested. I mean, you just can't speculate and say, well, people using more cell phones and they're using more capacity in a wireless network, so we think we need more coverage. There had to be a criteria somewhere from AT&T that make this determination that we need additional coverage here. What is it? What's the determination they used?
Sure. And so I can answer that question. And Allison, I apologize if I'm overstepping my boundaries here, but I certainly could work with the capacity engineers at AT&T to see if in some applications in my past experiences, a histogram has been provided showing the trends of the available spectrum versus the demand during the bouncing busy hours. And that's something that I would be more than happy to have created respective to the surrounding facilities, the ones that are being targeted. Now that graphic or that chart would show simply the demand based upon the usage, and it would show the frequencies available, which would show a breaking point, whether it be near future or past. If that's something that the board would be interested in, and again, Allison, I apologize for overstepping the boundaries, but I could certainly work with the capacity engineers from AT&T to have that created.
I do want to stress to the board, though, and I was just going to go through this, Mr. Paul, that it's not as if it's because AT&T said so, and therefore it is. I mean, Mr. Paul, you have reviewed, documentation from AT&T, and in your expert opinion, there is a capacity issue in this area, correct?
Absolutely, yes, that is correct.
Right, and it's limiting the ability of AT&T to provide reliable service to its customers, correct?
That is also correct, yes.
Which is what it's mandated to do under its FCC license, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And where is that information provided to us as a council? Everything you just asked them, where is that information telling me where the capacity is lacking and why you need these extra areas if there's coverage in that area? Shouldn't we be allowed to see that and need to see that for our community? We do want everybody to make sure they can get the services and get what they need, but we also don't need a war with poles every 10 feet with different things for different companies that end up not fulfilling the purpose for the people of the township. We have none of those numbers, none of those figures. We're just supposed to take somebody coming and saying, this is what I see, this is what I believe, and this is, but we see nothing except your testimony. We're hearing your testimony. There's nothing, facts and figures in front of us, letting to know where it is now and what it'll do once you give us you put the new service in. I believe that's one of our jobs, to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the people in our community, to make sure that they're getting the proper coverages, but also that they're not being inundated with a pole every 2 feet from different companies that may be impeding the services of what the other one's doing. There's a lot more to this than is even with a cell tower, I believe. I'm not an expert in this type of stuff, and I'm hearing the testimony, but I believe that we're entitled to facts and figures showing us why this needs to be done, and we're just getting testimony saying, we're telling you AT&T says, so it should be done.
Respectfully, you're getting an expert that's saying, in my expert opinion, I reviewed all the documentation, here's where the issue is. You're not hearing because AT&T says it's true. He's reviewed all of the documentation, and his expert opinion, there is an issue.
With all due respect, Allison, the role of an expert is to help the lay people understand the information that he's reviewed. But we should still have the ability ourselves to see, touch, review the information. The role of the expert is to then take that information, take that data, take that quantifiable information, and offer an opinion to this board as to how that data means that there is that the capacity in this area is exhausted. It's not simply the role of the expert to come in and say, it's my opinion that we need this, without at least giving the board, I'm basing that opinion on this data, and here it is. That's the part of the equation that's missing in this presentation and this application.
I had a question, if that's okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask the expert. I forget his name. I'm sorry. What's going on?
Sean.
Sean, the area that you're trying to put this pole, where the pink is after the extra coverage is provided, as Mr. Sloan said, it is an area that has a lot of usage. You know, I don't know if I want people watching movies while they're driving down Street Road. That's another story. But,
Sure.
You know, or in Coles, but there is a lot of capacity in that area that could be for demand. But it also seems to be where all three towers meet. You know what I mean? Where their coverage meets right there in that center. So is it because it's on the outskirts of those three towers that it needs extra power, for instance, or is it just like it seems to be like where all three of them meet in the center, you know?
Yes, absolutely, and that's an excellent observation because that is exactly one of many driving factors that are evaluated during the determination of where the site needs to be located in terms of proximity to densely populated areas if it's residential, or in this case it's commercial, retail, etc. But ultimately having one dominant server, and as you mentioned, sir, that where the proposed facility is, there's really three facilities that are on air today that are kind of competing for this general area. So customers could very easily be, I'll use the term, ping-ponging between AT&T facilities, and when that occurs, in lack of having a dominant server in a very specific area, when that occurs, it could result in dropped calls or data sessions being lost. And so ultimately having a dominant server in close proximity to where the largest volume of traffic is produced is ultimately a solution that will alleviate the capacity for the surrounding sites. So yes, sir, that is one of the factors. If this proposed facility were to be moved, a quarter of a mile or half a mile south west, the offload would not be as substantial simply because of the proximity to the shopping plaza and the storefronts there. Especially when you're dealing with a lower structure as the one proposed, because then the signal can be obstructed by the tree line or any type of building. So having that facility in more or less a line of sight to the area where that's heavily trafficked is really critical. And so yes, thank you for pointing that out. That's an excellent question.
May I make a suggestion as we banter this around for almost an hour? We have one reoccurring question being repeated over and over again, and that is, you have not proven to the council your actual need for this service in a tangible type of a way. And don't you think, and since you said you can provide that information for us, you can go back to your experts and talk to them and provide that information for us, don't you think it would be prudent for you to withdraw this this proposal at this time, reschedule it, come back with the information that we need to review, and make the. This is an hour we spent on one aspect of this proposal. This should have been finished.
And Councilman, I
So
just had the
I give
opportunity to
that
speak
to-
to my client, and that's what we were proposed to do. I just had the opportunity to speak to my client. That's what we proposed to do. We'll get the documentation that the council requested, and we'll come back next month.
All right, Mr. President,
That'll be
you want us
fine.
to put a motion on the floor?
Well, before you do, Mr. Kisselback, just as a matter of housekeeping for Ms. Fritches and her client, we were provided prior to this evening's hearing with copies of their notices to adjacent property owners, notifying them of this evening's conditional use hearing, together with the proofs of mailing. So, Allison, do you have them marked as an exhibit?
I do. That would be Exhibit A2.
Okay. So Exhibit A2 for this hearing is the affidavit of notice of the hearing to adjacent property owners. And inasmuch as that notice was provided, and inasmuch as this hearing has been convened, there will be no need for AT&T or Ms. Fritches to provide subsequent notice to those property owners.
Appreciate that.
All right, Mr. President, I'm going to put a motion on the floor that we reschedule this to a date certain of the first meeting in June, and the applicant will provide us with the information that was requested, as our solicitor will provide that request to Ms. Fritchett as to what our needs are. And the first meeting in June would be June what? Does anybody have the calendar in front of them?
That's the June 14 meeting. Will that be enough time, Allison, for your client to cull together the information and forward it to the township?
We will make it work, yes.
All right, June 14th it is then. That's a motion on the floor?
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
But
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. So give me 1 second here, members of council, if you will, just to turn that back.
I've had a better time than my dentist.
And then
that was rough. An hour of coverage discussion.
I think that's everyone.
Let's get a sewer lunch.
Anyone that enjoyed that discussion?
Okay. So the next hearing is for Costa, is that
Costa,
correct,
yep.
Mr. Polari? Okay, so Mr. Costa's attorney, I believe, is Mr. McGinnis. So let me let Mr. McGinnis into the fray here.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring this up and get us started and we can get everything going.
Michael, how are you?
Okay, Mr. McGinnis, you're muted, so if you'd like to unmute.
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Hang on a second.
Now, do you have witnesses, Mr. McGinnis? I believe Mr. Young, perhaps?
I do have Larry Young from Tri-State, and Al Costa is also, I believe, in the waiting room.
Okay, it shows as Nicole Costa, but I'm going to assume it's your client.
Thank you.
Okay, going to number 5, consideration of a preliminary and final land development subdivision. Applicant Costa Homes, address 4946 Neshaminy Boulevard, 4 single-family dwellings, RA1 residential district, tax parcel 2-19-97, 197.
Before you begin your presentation, Mr. McGinnis, the record should reflect that Mr. McGinnis has provided the township with his certificate of service together with copies of the notices of this evening's hearing that was mailed to the adjacent property owners, the list of property owners, and the proofs of service, all of which appear to be in order.
Okay, Mr. McGinnis?
All right, thank you very much. Mike McGinnis from Begley Carlin, here on behalf of Costa Home. The property at issue is 4946 Neshaminy Boulevard, and it's in the RA1 zoning district. Just to give council a brief bit of a refresher, we did come before council approximately 18 months ago with this property. It was originally planned as a subdivision. We had gone through the process back then, including an appearance in front of the zoning hearing board. And we had really listed a number of waivers. I think at one point there were almost 15 waivers that were essentially relating to deferring the land development improvements until the land development submission, which would have followed the subdivision. Based on the feedback that the council provided in correspondence with the township, we altered our process and our plans and proceeded with what's in front of you tonight, which is a subdivision land development submission, which is contemporaneous. We then went back to the Planning Commission, and we had a couple waivers that were outlined. Since then, we've been working with the township professionals, specifically Larry Young from Tri-State has been working and revising the plan in an attempt to eliminate our waiver requests. And as a result of our plan resubmissions, T&M issued a new letter in April, and there were very few comments left. All of the outstanding comments, I will state, are will comply items other than the single waiver, which we have, and that is requesting council grant preliminary and final approval simultaneously. I believe that is a waiver request from section 201-43C5. With respect to the project itself, what we're doing is attempting to receive an approval to create a 4-lot subdivision with the associated improvements. The total lot size presently is approximately 1.83 acres. The 4 lots that we would be creating range from 16,117 square feet on the low end to 21,634 square feet on the high end. The square footage has remained, I think, static throughout this process. And I would state, I think if you looked at the surrounding area and the properties across Neshaminy Boulevard, that the lots that we're proposing here are in keeping with other lots in the community. They're all regularly shaped. There are no flag lots. We believe this is consistent with the area. Presently, there's one single-family detached dwelling with an attached garage that's going to remain. We have that, I think, on our plan set noted as what we're labeling as Lot 2. As I said earlier, we would be in conjunction with that, creating 3 additional lots. All of those lots would be improved with single-family detached dwellings. This is typically when I would go through the waiver requests with Larry, and we would detail why we think our waivers are appropriate. But again, as I stated, other than the preliminary final in one shot, we don't have any other waivers. Everything else is a will comply. So, Larry, unless there's anything else that you want to state from a technical standpoint, I think that's a summation essentially of where we are, and we appreciate your consideration tonight.
Okay, do we have any questions from council at this time?
Yeah, Mr. Blair, I have a few. Mr. McGinnis, the letter from TPD, are you or will comply on a number of those items? For example, I'm looking at the 5-foot sidewalk being provided, the ramp access, and as well as I believe there was a suggestion for replacement of the streetlights.
Yeah, everything in TPD's letter, and I think as Mr. Benner's last letter noted, the last correspondence we had really from TPD was a email correspondence on April 16th. We have everything identified as a will comply.
Okay.
Mr. Benner, is that agreeable with you?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Benner, your last letter is April 21st. Is that the one we're talking about?
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure there wasn't one.
Mr. Tuckmation, do you have some other questions?
No, not at this time.
I
Okay.
have a question for our solicitor, Mr. Pizzo, on the Section D 201 subdivision land development, and it's number 12, for Section 201-103E2B. To the Council of Bensalem Township, in the exercise of its sole discretion, determined that the purpose of the Bensalem Township Recreation Plan will be better served by the acceptance of the fees in lieu of. And it goes on from there as it's $2,000 per dwelling. Would that be 3 dwellings, because there was an existing dwelling, or would it be 4 dwellings that the recreation fee would be charged? Mr. Pizzo, I'm asking you, since it's a new project.
Certainly. And Mr. Typically, my understanding is that the township interprets that provision of the ordinance to apply to the newly created lots. So where you have a single lot that is being subdivided into 4, as is the case here, the township would assess the recreation fee on the 3 newly created lots. Each one would be assessed that fee in lieu of providing the required recreation space.
And the same would be with the associated with the impact fee also?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And there's no impact fee as determined as of yet, is that correct?
I don't recall having, no, the impact fee was calculated back by TPD back in the fall. I don't believe the number has changed. It's been determined that it would generate 3 new trips in the PM peak hour, total impact fee of $2,972.97.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
All right, so we have $6,000 for recreation fee plus another approximate $3,000 for the impact fee.
That is
And the
correct.
applicant would be willing to pay those, is that correct, Michael?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Do we have any other questions from the board?
At this point, I kind of want to reserve any questions or comments I have. I know that when this was on the agenda at our last meeting, there were a number of public comments that were sent in, and we all agreed that we would have those read into the record tonight. So I'd like to hear those first.
Yep, that would be next.
Certainly. If you're ready to proceed with public comment now, the individuals who sent us comments last meeting have sent comments again tonight. So let me work, I'll start with this evening's comments and then work backwards to, in the hope of not duplicating. First comment is from Nathaniel and Kelly Wolak, W-O-L-A-K, at 4922 Neshaminy Boulevard. We are requesting that you, the council, reject the proposal for 4 homes for the property. We have said in the past that the construction of 4 homes would have a major impact on the use, value, and overall aesthetics of our home and the existing properties around the development. If 3 houses were going on the property due to the size of the existing home, there would be no waivers needed. As we have said before, the developer/property owner knew before he/they purchased the property that it was too small for 4 homes, as he verified the size between our home and the existing home by measuring from the middle of our driveway. There is not enough space or square footage between our home and the existing home for a new house to be built. The proposed lot next to our home is too small for a house between ours and the existing home. That is the only issue that we have for the development of the property. We request that no waivers be given for the 4th home, knowing that this would have a major impact on our home and quality of life for my wife, children, and I, as well as the community. When building a house too close to an existing home, there is too much of a chance for many problems to arise in the future. That's why we have the zoning restrictions and development guidelines for such developments. Too close is still too close. We hope that you take the time to consider our home, our family, and the neighborhood. Please reject the proposal for 4 lots and request that they reapply for just 3 lots. That would be a better fit for the existing properties and the neighborhoods. Thank you, Kelly and Nathaniel Wolak. Next comment is from Andrew Nazuski. And I believe Mr. Nazuski did provide us with several comments prior to the last meeting. So we'll start with the comment from tonight. I am Andrew Nazuski, 4939 Neshaminy Boulevard, Bensalem. I am requesting the postponement of final land development for Acosta Homes. The township website has nothing to view on this matter. The April 26 meeting has the plans for the grounds, but no paperwork. Acosta's engineer should have all this on one disk for residents to view on the township website. This is the same act that was pulled at the second zoning hearing. All new plans were submitted to the zoning hearing board, and nothing was put on the website. Plus, the neighbors were not notified of the date for the hearing. Even though Attorney McHugh was specifically asked about notification at first hearing, he replied to be determined. As for the new plans, one person looked at them for a couple minutes before the hearing. To this day, I have not seen them. What about it, council? Do you want to make it mandatory to put all additional plans on the website and to inform all parties to the new hearing date? Please consider the rights of the neighbors and correct this situation with a postponement. Thank you, Andrew Nazuski. Those are the only 2 comments that were received this evening.
May I ask a question regarding the first one, Mr. Pizzo?
Yes.
Regarding 4 homes or less than 4 homes, wasn't a variance granted by the zoning board to allow 4 homes to be built on this property? Am I correct or am I incorrect?
I will defer to Mr. McGinnis or Mr. Benner on that question.
The answer to that, Mr. Kisselback, was that it was granted previously by the zoning hearing board. This was a discussion that had occurred about 2 years ago, actually, because there's a 20,000 square feet minimum lot size, and this lot is almost 80,000 square feet. I believe it's 79,000 square feet and change. So we did need dimensional variance from the zoning hearing board to permit the 4-lot subdivision, and the zoning hearing board did grant that variance after a hearing.
So you have one lot at 18,000 square feet plus additional footage, another lot at 16,000 square foot. So basically, that's a 10% reduction in one lot and a 20% reduction in the other lot. Is that about accurate?
I think that's correct. I believe, yes.
All right.
Mike, the smallest lot is the furthest one away from the house question, right? The 18,000 square foot house is the one that's next to the neighbor, right? The smallest lot is actually the opposite, closer to the back of the school or the other road, right? Like
that is correct.
Yes.
Yeah, they're complaining about lot 1, which I understand. That's 87 by 87 by 201. The smallest lot's 80. But that's lot 4. That's at the opposite end.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Prior to and during the, prior to and during the April 26th meeting, the township received a public comment from Nathaniel and Kelly Wolak, and I had an opportunity to skim it while Mr. Kisselback's question was being answered, and it is the same public comment. So their comment from this evening is identical to their comment from April 26. As far as Mr. Nazuski's, it is somewhat different in content, so I'll read his April 26 comment as well. Dear council members, I'm Andrew Nazuski, 4939 Neshaminy Boulevard. I'm opposed to a 4-lot subdivision. 3 lots would be more in character for this neighborhood. Traffic is a major concern. Everyone on this block has 4 or more off-street parking. I can only leave my driveway going forward. At the first zoning board hearing, 2 of the 3 board members asked Mr. Costa to come back with plans for 3 lots, not the 4 he wanted with his aerial description. At the second zoning board hearing, July 11, 2019, Mr. Costa came back with 4 lots again, and only Mr. Champion mentioned that his asking for 3 lots was a good idea. Motion carried 4-0. At the Planning Commission meeting September 16, 2020, members looked at the plans. When asked who received all 367 pages of submitted items, all answered they got only the engineer's plans. How come? The other pages contained hydrology reports based on Bensalem stormwater management requirements. What year? And test pit results from June 5, 2020 from Shetter Environmental. At the meeting, each member was asked, did you go and look at the neighborhood or property? Only Mr. Tokmajian Sr. stepped foot on the grounds, and another member stated that he drives by it a lot. What say you, council members? How often does this occur? A forever decision without all the papers and without looking at the parcel in question. The drainage basins will create problems. Look at the size of each. Future homeowners cleaning them out? Township inspections? What if it's fenced in? Unable to add a patio or any structure because each lot is maxed out on impervious area. Will Mr. Costa add a rain gutter leaf guard? Look at Lot 4, the smallest lot with the largest basin and the worst test pit results. Yes, all lots passed. Did you view the test results on page 360 to 367 on Planning Commission agenda September 16, 2020? Engineers' drawings show trees that don't exist. Only 1 apple tree on Lot 4 will remain on this whole parcel. There are no trees on Mr. Wolak's side, and all trees in backyard are behind the school's fence. School's trees? The sidewalk on the school's property is 54 inches. Mr. Costa wants 48 inches. Pico's underground transformer on Lot 3 will interfere with grading and sidewalk. There are 2 high-voltage power poles plus street lamp posts. The electric power lines run underground across Lot 3 and feeds Mr. Costa's house and continues to Mr. Wolak's house. That should be a nightmare to relocate, especially with the grading. Let's talk trees. Mr. Costa cut down 5 trees, all about 80 feet soon after his purchase. Cutting the apple trees except for 1 apple tree and cutting all the trees on the front leaves a barren property. Look at drawing number 13. It also shows the trees, garage, and outbuildings that were torn down by Mr. Costa. His idea of putting several dogwood trees on the front is insufficient. Plus, why not red maple or oak trees? I am sick of cleaning flowers and later leaves that always blow over onto my lawn. So, I suggest a 3-lot subdivision. That will give 2 lots with plenty of room for expansion. Mr. Costa can easily build and sell dwellings close to $700,000. His profit margin will not suffer. Thank you, Council, for the beautiful repaving of Neshaminy Boulevard, which was finished today. Do you realize that the water and sewer lines are on my side and the gas lines are on Mr. Costa's side? Sincerely, Andrew Nazuski. On April 26, we also received 3 email from Paul Barnes at 4948 Hillside. I'll start with the largest one, and I think that may be a duplicate. From Paul Barnes, 4948 Hillside Avenue, Bensalem. Council members, regarding tonight's agenda item number 6, the Acosta Homes preliminary and final land development subdivision, I think it should be tabled until such time that all citizens who wish to comment on the item are permitted to do so. With the current meeting format, there are citizens of Bensalem Township that are not permitted to attend the public meeting, and so their input, which is their right by law, is denied. I will use myself as an example, though my situation is the same as others in this matter. I do not have cable television, therefore I cannot watch the meeting in real time. I can go to the township building tomorrow after the meeting and watch it there, which is meaningless. I do not have a computer camera, so I can't effectively participate in a Zoom meeting. In fact, though I am sending this email to council, I don't even have a way to know if it ever gets read in the meeting, as I've been denied access because of the meeting format and paid services needed to attend the meeting. No public meeting can have costs involved. If attending it, it reminds me of the poll or no voting. Get a cable service and a camera or you don't get to attend the meeting. And emails are limited to 300 words, so I can't even make a clear, cogent argument about this tabling of agenda item, much less address the item. We, the citizens of this community, have great interest in this agenda item, have been silenced by the council meetings requirement, imposed cost, and technical requirements. The developer has not. The obvious ethical unbalance is enough of a reason to table the item. The format may even be legal, though I doubt it due to the costs involved to attend, but it is in no way ethical of, more important, it simply doesn't work. I have several suggestions as to how the meetings can be made fair to all, and indeed suggested some of them to council before the current format was implemented, but I can't remind that of council now since, again, council has limited me to 300 words, far less than I could use in a meeting I would be allowed to attend. I can't be required to pay to attend a meeting, and I can't excluded from a meeting by this or any council because of costs or technical issues. It's unethical. It simply doesn't work. Did you read this email in the meeting? I have no idea. Paul Barnes. During the meeting, Mr. Barnes sent a second email on April 26, which read, to council, I went on the internet on Friday about noon to view the posted information about the agenda item. There were 21 pages of data regarding the agenda item, but no plans to view. The plans should have been posted for the required time before the meeting. They were not. For this reason, this agenda item should be tabled until the citizens interested in this item can view the plans posted in the required manner. Mr. Barnes' third email, which was also sent during the April 26th meeting, is a resend of the first email that I read, so I won't read that a second time. That's it as far as public comment, unless something has come in while I was reading these, and no, nothing has come in since.
Okay, Mr. Sloan, you heard the emails, the information sent. Do you have any more questions?
I guess my biggest issue, and I do agree that I think that 4 homes is a bit crowded on this property. I think that 3, subdivided out would make a lot more sense, especially that lot 4 being the smallest of the 4. My bigger issue, though, is that it doesn't seem to these plans don't seem to adhere to the RA1 zoning district, which, per our ordinance, the intent of it is, among other things, to provide an adequate buffer between each RA1 community and the surrounding districts. This property is on the edge of this particular RA1 district. So subdividing it into 4 lots where 2 of them would, not only not conform to the minimum lot area, but it just becomes a very crowded and dense environment that was not intended for in the RA1. So it seems completely in contrast with the goals of the RA1 community. That's my biggest concern. It's just too much being crammed in there. And I think that this particular lot size is just not conducive to 4 houses on there.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, Joe, I had a question. The problem is, I pointed out, was if you went to 3 lots, you would eliminate lot 4, and you would still have lot 1, which is between the existing structure and the house. So you wouldn't eliminate you would eliminate the smallest lot, which is actually on the other end, next to open space for the school and a street. So, and there's still 16,000 square foot lots, the smallest, and that's across the street. There's much smaller lots than that, and also down the street in Belmont Ridge, most of the houses have less lots than that. So I think it's a 16 or 18,000 square foot lot's a pretty big lot, and most of them are missing it off the back, not the front. The fronts are wide enough, and just the backs aren't quite as deep, which doesn't affect as much as having a smaller front. That's all I have. Thanks.
Yeah, but
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. Any other questions?
yeah, Mr. Knoll, I do see what you're saying. However, I think a good point was raised in some of those comments related to impervious space, right? And we're seeing that across this township where, they're building based off of a smaller lot size, right? And then what happens if there's a deck that's built, patio, pool, shed, all that stuff, and then you could very well create more problems down the road. And I'm talking in terms of water management. And we know in Chamonix Boulevard is up more on the high side, right? So we're going to see an increase in impervious space, and that water is going to flow down into that neighborhood down on Hillside. So water management is certainly a significant concern. And Joe, we're seeing that across the board, right? We're seeing that across the township.
The lots, like Belmont Ridge, for instance, the lots are a lot smaller there, and the houses are bigger. So there's, and if they go to put a patio in or a deck, they have to get another permit. They don't just let them pave their.
Fair enough, Joe. And there's water issues over here too as well.
But I don't think that any development can allow water to go from their lots onto other lots. So Russ Benner, our engineer, is going to have to tell us that water is not going to go from any of those lots, whether it was 3 or 4, and flow into the neighborhood. Is that right, Mr. Benner, or is that correct?
And now, and really, the process that was kind of undertaken between when the Planning Commission meeting was, which is back in September, to where we are tonight, during that whole time, really the focus was on stormwater management as far as the plans go and revising the plans. And, one thing we do recognize is quite frankly, being one of the people that reviews permits, whether it be for decks or patios, we certainly evaluate the stormwater management facilities that are on the property to make sure they're not impacted. And then if they're over 1,000 square feet of additional impervious coverage that's added, any applicant, whether it be for a patio or shed, has to submit a stormwater management plan for our review. And the one thing that should be noted for the design, and once again, we always, when we're dealing with applicants, knowing the issues about stormwater management in the township, is try to design facilities that kind of go over and above. That's what's required by the stormwater management ordinance. And in this case, on page 4 of our review letter, you'll see a table. And the reason we include this to try to point out what we do for that. And you can see there's a significant decrease between pre and post development runoff from each one of these properties. And that's a result of requiring the applicant to really have 2 stormwater management facilities per property. And that really includes the existing house as well.
I think if we looked at this property, because it has a deficit of some square footage, I guess 6,000 square foot if you take the total property and the four buildings, based on a 20,000 square foot dimension for the actual lots themselves. If we looked at that, and if it caused additional problems, we would have to look at this in light of what's being said tonight. But the applicant is complying with all of the waivers that they had requested. So there is no waivers we have to grant. So it's not causing any additional problems whatsoever regarding the subdivision and land development. Plus the applicant, as far as what Mr. McGinnis had said earlier, there were other waivers that they were going to request or requirements that they also adhere to. So I don't see any problems being concerned or committed from this particular additional lot that I would have to adhere, that I would have to discuss or to take into consideration.
Mr. Benner, is there any zoning issues?
No, because of the variances that were granted by the zoning hearing board.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, then a motion would be in order.
I'll put a motion on the floor, Mr. President, that we approve the preliminary and final subdivision for the Costa Homes Incorporated for 4946 Neshaminy Boulevard. Tax map parcel is 02019-197. The applicant, if we go from the memorandum from Russell Benner from T&M, dated April 21st, the applicant will comply with the A, B, C, and D. There are no zoning issues. They were granted any variances they needed. There are no waivers that are being requested. Everything will be in compliance. And as I said, the applicant had asked for this to be a preliminary and final, and that's what I would be granting. That's the motion I would put forward.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
I vote aye. Passes 3-2. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Stay
night.
safe.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, number 6 on the agenda is a consideration of a resolution for Act Number 537, PA Sewage Facilities Act, plan revisions for new land development of parcel of land identified as 4946 Neshaminy Boulevard subdivision. Mr. Pizzo?
Yes, we've admitted Mr. Dumack, Keith Dumack of Dumack Engineering into the meeting. He's the engineer for the applicant. Good evening, Mr. Dumack.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Mr. Dumack?
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I believe this is a continuation. The meeting this application had been previously advertised for a prior meeting and had been tabled to a date certain of this evening's meeting. Am I correct?
Pizzo, I think we may have skipped over agenda item number 6.
Okay. If you really want to do item 6, that's fine. I guess we can do that.
Well, that's what I just put out. This is the sewer, the resolution for the plan revised for the property that was just approved.
My apologies.
You want me to leave the Zoom and I'll come back later?
No, stay right there. So item 6 is the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, Act 537 resolution for the sanitary sewer facilities for the Costa subdivision, which was just approved by council in the prior item. As council is aware, this is a routine matter that is required by the Department of Environmental Protection whenever the township approves a subdivision or land development. It is a certification that the adequate, or not adequate, but that the changes that have just been approved by the township will result in changes to the township's sanitary sewer plan for the township, and that the township is making the Department of Environmental Protection aware of the fact that the changes are approved by the township and in concert with the previously approved land development. So this is the same form resolution that you're provided by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection for these matters. It's been reviewed by our office and by the engineer. It is in a form acceptable for your consideration and approval this evening.
And with that, I'll put down a form of motion to approve as presented.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 5-0. Okay, number 7 on the agenda, consideration of a final land development for Zekia Incorporated, Street Road and Castle Drive, retail, zoning classification GC, commercial, general commercial, tax parcel 2-37-39 and 2-37-40. All yours.
Thank you. So, this is the item for which Mr. Dumack has joined us. He represents the applicant, La Azteca Incorporated, in regard to this minor land development plan. And again, as I noted moments ago, this application had been previously scheduled for a prior council meeting, at which time it was tabled to a date certain of this evening. So the notices were in order and remain in order. And with that, Mr. Dumack, you can proceed. I'm looking, I know I spoke earlier in the day with counsel for your client, and I'm aware that he had a conflict and would not be joining us this evening. Are you expecting anyone, your clients or anyone else, or are you flying solo?
I am expecting my clients. They were sent the link, the Zoom link, but unfortunately I have not seen or heard hide nor hair of them. They're out of town. It was a long weekend for them. I believe they went on vacation down to Florida. But I was going to suggest, let's see how this progresses. Hopefully this can be reviewed and approved this evening. To carry your commentary forward, this project was previously before you and I believe approved in 2015. It is a retail establishment. The clients, Mr. and Mrs. Cruz, own a, it's not a grocery store per se, it's kind of a menagerie of different retail products that they sell. They have a store literally directly across the street. This project was fully approved in 2015, and I believe it had been had gone before zoning on 2 or 3 different occasions prior to the 2015 approval. The reason we're here tonight for, in essence, a reaffirmation of the plan is the clients were ready to go to construction May or June of 2020, and unfortunately, between COVID and everything else that had started up, they could not get their plans in time to the township for construction permit. There is a timeline for land developments of 5 years, and in this instance, it was 5 years and 1 or 2 months. So we were instructed to resubmit for, in essence, a reaffirmation of the prior plan. And that's why we're here tonight, is we are looking for reaffirmation from you.
Mr. Dumack, is this the office building on the corner? Where is this?
This is the opposite corner on Castle. The little office building that, and I apologize, is it occupied at this point?
I don't know if it's occupied or not. It hasn't been for a few years now. I'm drawing a blank to this approval you say you had for the property on the other side, so.
This was the property directly across the street on Castle, same side of Street Road, but the opposite side. So if that little office, that one-story office building was call it the east side, this would have been the west side of Castle. It's basically a derelict older residence with a concrete fountain in the front. And then next door is an empty building lot.
Right.
Okay, and we don't have any of the witnesses here, the attorney's not here, so any questions that we might have of the applicant, we won't be able to ask them and get answers to them. You want to go through with this anyway?
I was hoping, quite honestly,
I'm not asking for hope, I'm telling you, there's nobody here for us to ask questions of. And you're taking quite a risk of going through this without the board being able to ask questions of the applicant and them to be answered. So, I mean, I'm leaving it up to you. If you want to go forward with it, that's totally up to you.
I'm not an attorney. I don't try to play one on TV, and trust me, I did not stay in a Holiday Inn Express.
It's not the question. It's not the question.
I know.
It's not the question I asked you. Please answer the question I asked you. Do you want
to be honest? I would rather wait.
Okay, so you want to post
table it to the next month.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's probably best, Mr. Dumack, as Mr. Polari indicated, while the plan is a reaffirmation, as you suggest, there are some engineering questions, I guess, that have cropped up in between 2015 and today, particularly in the area of stormwater management and perhaps traffic access to the site. And it may be useful to have Mr. or Mrs. Cruz available to speak as to what their plans, what their vision, what their need is for the building they intend to have on the property. So it's waited this long. A couple more weeks probably isn't better. It's been said that a slow yes is better than a fast no. And inasmuch as neither Mr. Toadvine nor the Cruzes are here tonight, prudence probably dictates that a continuance to the June 14 meeting is not a bad idea.
I'm only trying to be fair to make sure that everybody has their opportunity, that's all.
That we're all, and it's done right. Yes, no, I'm fine with that. And the slow yes, that's definitely a nod to Tom Hecker.
Yes, it is.
Exactly.
So I'm okay if you gentlemen, and I apologize, there is a lady present as well on this Zoom. If you are okay with tabling it, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, do we have a motion to table this to the June 14th meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Who made the motion?
Jesse.
Jesse made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Blair.
Talkmasian. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
We'll see you then.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, number 9 on the agenda, or 8 is, we continued to June 14th. Number 9 on the agenda, consideration of a resolution, Act Number 537, Sewer Facilities Act, plan revisions for new land development of parcel of land identified at River's Edge at Penryn Estates. Mr. President?
Did we approve the land development for that?
I don't know if we did or didn't.
Before we proceed, Mr. Benner, did we approve the land development application for this, or is a land development application going to be coming, or?
No, I believe we did approve the land development at the November 11th meeting.
That's my recollection as well, but I got bitten by that bug once before. In fact, it was for Mr. Costas, so I want to make sure that before we proceed, that the plan has in fact been previously approved by council.
I anticipated that tonight, and that's why I looked up the approval date.
You're the man.
Thank you, sir.
In that case, everything I said about the Act 537 resolution for Costa 4-lot subdivision would apply to the Act 537 resolution for the River's Edge at Penryn Estates. The resolution has been reviewed by my office, by the engineer, and is in a form acceptable for your consideration and approval this evening.
Do we have a motion to accept the resolution?
Yeah, Mr. Blair, I'll make the motion that we approve the Act 537 resolution for River's Edge at Penryn Estates.
Second.
Mr. Knowles, that was you second?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Number 10 on the agenda, consideration and a public hearing for an ordinance amending Chapter 225, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 2, Traffic Regulations, Section 6, Appendix A, shall be amended to add the following restrictions: no parking, no stopping, no standing, anytime, Clinton Avenue, direction of travel eastbound, location from Mitchell Avenue to Cedar Avenue.
That pretty well covers it, Mr. Polari. The mayor's office received a complaint about trucks and cars parking along the roadway on the east side of Clinton Avenue in the area of Mitchell and Cedar. Accordingly, the mayor had the traffic safety officer go out and perform a traffic safety study. The determinations by the traffic safety officer and the traffic safety supervisor were that vehicles are in fact parking on both sides of the roadway, and that as such they're causing operators to have a difficult time making turns from Mitchell Ave onto Clinton. Similarly, it was their determination that the fire department would be unable to make a turn with a fire truck if cars are parked on both sides of the roadway. Accordingly, a recommendation came to the administration, and in turn the mayor directed our office to prepare an ordinance that would provide for no parking, stopping, or standing signs to be placed on the east side of Clinton Avenue from Mitchell Avenue to Cedar Ave. In order for those signs to be posted, it does require an amendment to the township's traffic regulations as part of the township code. The proposed form of ordinance is been provided to council in your packets. It has been advertised as required in the Bucks County Courier-Times. As Mr. Polari read, it would provide for no parking, stopping, standing, anytime signs to be placed on Clinton Avenue eastbound from Mitchell Avenue to Cedar Avenue. The ordinance is in a form consideration for your approval and consideration this evening.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve as presented.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
second it, Mr. Blair.
Okay, any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Vote aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Number 11 on the agenda, consideration of escrow release. Bensalem MZL LLC, release number 1, 1837 Street Road, 2-43-305 and 2-43-305-1. Mr. Benner.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is essentially for the first escrow release for the Kmart redevelopment site. We've conducted an inspection based upon the request, and we found that items have been in order to release $136,065 of the escrowed items.
Do we have any questions from the board? If not, a motion would be in order.
I'll put
Mr.
that
President,
in
I'll make
form
the
of
motion that
motion. We accept it as presented.
I'll second it.
Any questions on the motion? And that would be subject to an audit by the finance department, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Galloway Reserve, release number 1, AKA Victory Square, 2670 Galloway Road, 2-33-7. Mr. Benner.
Yeah, once again, this is an escrow release. It was actually before council a couple of months ago. This is escrow release number 1 for this development. The developer essentially requested $922,856 to be released. After conducting our inspections, we think the appropriate amount to be released is $890,672.55. There's some additional work that needs to be done for some of those items that were requested that we felt we needed to hold back some additional monies. So this release is then for $890,672.55.
Where are we with all the complaints and things that we had from the residents there the last time we were looking at this? Have we looked into those, make sure that the people are getting their properties checked and the things that need to be done, and we're doing this all correctly?
Yes, and in fact, Quentin is here with us tonight, and I think Quentin would be appropriate to give an update on the status of where those items are. If you remember correctly, after that meeting a few months ago, there was subsequently a meeting with the developer of this project. We went over, he provided a schedule to us, and Quentin, why don't you provide an update on the status of that schedule to complete those items?
Okay, basically regarding the complaints, the biggest one was regarding the tot that's been installed. The paving is scheduled, I believe, for June of this year. The sediment trap has been converted to the detention basin. I'm not sure if that's 100%. I know our guys were out there doing the process, but I'm not sure if it's 100% confirmed from my inspectors out there. The only other thing there was a lot of complaints about grading. I think 90 or 80% of that has been addressed. Problem is, we haven't had any rain since that work's been done. We're kind of waiting on that to confirm that those issues are addressed and everything's draining properly on those residents' properties.
Quentin, those were on-lot drainage issues.
On-lot drainage issues, correct. I know there's a couple items that my inspector told me today that weren't completed pertaining to that, but I probably reached out to the developer, but I didn't get an answer because of the time of the day it was.
Of the items that could be completed, how much from a percentage-wise would you estimate were completed?
I'd say about 80 to 85%. I think from what I remember reading the report that he told me, I think we're missing 3 or 4 items.
Is $260,000 enough to ensure that the rest of the items are completed? That's left here.
Well,
Yes.
and I think the better question is are those items listed in this list for us?
Well, basically, the grading issues and complaints, that will be in the grading items. I don't have the report that was provided. I know we did hold money back to get those items corrected from the previous released requests several months ago. Those have been since done, but we didn't revise our numbers from the previous report that we did. The only thing we changed in the report was the signing of the council date to this date today.
I recognize that, Quinn, but there's no grading itemization here. Just to summarize, concrete, paving, landscaping, and general items. General items don't look like it's grading. But I guess my other question to you is the detention basin fully functioning now?
Yeah, the basin was completed per plan. I was not there myself, but as far as I know, everything was done. Now, if it's stabilized, I couldn't tell because I was not there. But I think that's really the only thing they're waiting for now is the stabilization.
Okay. All right. The top light says install the paving and we have the escrow for the paving in case something were to go wrong there in June. So it's really just the grading, and I guess then to go back to Mr. Knowles' question is, is the 260 more than sufficient if we did have issues with the grading, Mr. Benner? Would that cover anything that might not necessarily be itemized here?
Yeah, and I think there's a page, Debbie put out a supplement early this morning on one of the pages that was not in the council's packet, and that includes grading on that page. And I think what it shows that there's monies remaining, and we didn't release all of that item.
Do we have any other questions?
Are you? I'm sorry, Mr. Benner. Are you referring to section A?
Oh, hold on first.
Ed, I think it's section D, line item 31, grading.
Oh, there, I see it. Okay. Part of the,
Yeah, I thought it was one of the last items on the previous.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Grading looks nice that they did it. Whether it works when it rains or not is another story, but it looks like they did do a good job of looking at it.
Mr. Benner, I've just a couple questions. The signage, it looked like there's a note that says work not completed, but we're releasing about 80%. Does that just mean that it's only partially complete? It's not finished yet?
Correct.
Yeah. Go ahead, Quinn.
Yeah, the street signs and the stop signs have been installed. We have some no parking signage that needs to go in the development now.
Okay. And the street signs, that's another one. This was a weird note. It said item not an approved cost estimate. Can you tell me what that means? Was that not the original quantification of improvements?
From what I remember, on the release request from the developer, the line item that was specified wasn't listed as a line item on our approved cost estimate. So I think it was a relationship to a signage, but we had two signage line items. So we just assumed that they were using the one signage requirement or one line item for the signage, and we kind of grouped that together, didn't release anything on the one item, and just used the money from the cost estimate line item that we had, and we kept that money.
That makes sense. That's all I had.
Okay, if there's no other questions, a motion would be in order.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we release the $890,672.55 as suggested with an audit from the finance department.
Do we have a second to motion?
I'll second.
Second the motion.
Any
I just have a
question on the
question.
motion?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do we have any public comment on this? I mean, I know we got.
No, I checked with Mr. Pizzo, there is none.
All right, thank you very much.
If there's no other questions on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Hold on.
Abstentions, ayes have it, 5-0. Developers request Waterside Phase 2, release number 7, revised, State Road, tax parcel 265-22, 264-138, 267-139 for $944,281.81. Mr. Benner.
Yeah, once again, this is their first escrow release on phase 2 of the development. We reviewed the request, and of the request, $980,601, we agreed to release $944,281. There's still some work associated with a couple of line items that needed to be completed that we weren't satisfied with. And therefore, we're recommending the release of $944,281.81. And this is for phase 2.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? If there's no questions, the motion would be in order.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we release escrow, the Waterside Phase 2, as suggested by our engineer, Russ Benner, and audited by our finance department.
I'll second it.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. You want to make that as part of the public comment? Okay, we're going to go to public comment next.
It was tabled. If you want, I'll save it for the next meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Acknowledge that it was received.
That's fine. Public comment?
Yes.
Thanks, Steph.
Township received comments from Wesley Myers, 1203 Bristol Pike, in regard to agenda item number 6, which council will recall was the, I'm sorry, not number 6, number 8, which is the final land development for Raymond Richardson R&R Produce and Garden Center. Council tabled that item to a date certain of June 14, so I think it worked well this evening. We'll hold this comment that was hand-delivered to the township to the June 14 meeting. As Mr. Polari announced at the outset, plan is at this point for June 14 to be an in-person meeting, so Mr. Myers may want to come and testify in person at that time. But in the meantime, we'll hold that comment until that agenda item is in front of all of you. Same is true for the cell tower. Andrew Nazuski, 4939 Neshaminy Boulevard, submitted public comment in regard to that. Obviously, we hadn't yet gotten to the public comment portion of the hearing on that application, so we can hold that public comment until that hearing resumes. And again, perhaps Mr. Nazuski will come in person if we're back, if he so chooses at that time.
Are you cold, Debbie?
The last comment is a public comment from Larry and Donna Grace, 918 Tennis Ave. This is in regard to property at 850 Highland Avenue. Last council meeting, April 26, 21, this letter was submitted for public comment. And then it is a restate of their public comment from April 26. In reference to conditions at Newcastle Andalusia Supply, located 850 Highland Avenue, 863 Bristol Pike, adjoining properties, I and surrounding property owners are still being impacted by the unlawful use at this location in the following ways. As I said, this is a restate or a resend of their comments from the April 26 meeting, which were already read into the record. If council wants, I can reread the email that you, or the comment you already heard once, verbatim. That's up to you, Council President.
Well, can we get an update of where we are with that property, either Russ or Quentin? Give us an update where we are with that. I know we've had discussions about the cleanup of that property, the tractor trailers that are still going there, and parking there and things of that nature. Where are we with that at this point?
When I talked with Ken this morning, and I know, I believe, and I apologize, I've been on like the periphery of this issue, but today was their last day to kind of vacate and clear the property. Quentin, I don't know if you can provide anything additional on that. Up, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, me and Richard haven't been involved with this at all, really. So I wouldn't want to tell you anything false. I know Ken, I believe, sent Joe something. I'm not sure if Joe has that or not.
I do. The Director of Building and Planning sent an email to me. Newcastle has a temporary UNO for their new facility on State Road. That temporary UNO does not become a permanent UNO, and in fact can be revoked until and if the facility that's the subject of the letter from Mr. and Mrs. Grace, the property at 850 Highland and 863 Bristol Pike, until that is, Andalusia Supply is completely out of there. As Russ suggested, the township has been told that no new product is being delivered to the Bristol Pike location. Ken is saying that they are supposed to be fully operational at State Road by now, and that the cleanup of the Bristol Pike site is to begin after they became fully operational at State Road. All of the materials that were remaining at the Andalusia location would be moved down to the State Road site. Mr. Farrell says, to his knowledge, all products are now being sold out of the State Road site, and that no products are being sold out of the Highland Avenue site. He has supposed to, as it would turn out, be in contact with Jeff Roth tomorrow, at which point he's supposed to get an update as to the status of the move into State Road, to discuss the transition of the UNO from temporary to permanent at that site, and to get an ETA on the cleanup and final move out from the Highland Avenue site. So things are in the works. I know it's been a long time for the residents of that neighborhood. I haven't been involved in it as much as others in the administration, but I know it has been a long process. But it seems as if we're getting close to the finish line, and Mr. and Mrs. Grace, hopefully if you can be just a little bit more patient. I know the mayor has been on top of Ken to get this across the finish line, and hopefully we're almost there.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, and just a quick comment on that, Mr. Pazzo. I mean, I know we're progressing. I don't want to dismiss that. You can see that they're clearly frustrated, and getting impatient to some extent. And from what I understand, there's still some movement from the old location, understanding they had to move. But I think it would be nice to have some finalization there in terms of, we don't have any idea as far as when that temporary UNO will go to permanent. We don't have some closer idea. I mean, we're talking about the end of May, or are we talking about another 2 months when they'll be completely out of that old location?
What I was going to suggest that Mr. Benner tell Ken that we'd like a report on exactly where we are, what the dates and so forth are, and then we can relay that to all of council.
Okay, that's fine. how long can we expect that?
That's what I just asked Mr. Benner to get tomorrow. Talk to Ken Farrell and ask him to get a report and give us where we are, what the dates are, when he has to be out of there totally, and what ramifications, if they're not out of there, are we going to have? Because he can't get a permanent UNO until they are out of there totally. So council's asking for a schedule of what we're looking at, and make sure that they're held to the schedule that we've given. If that's okay, if that's acceptable to you, Mr. Tokmasian, can you?
Yeah, that's fine, as long as I'm okay with that.
Mr. Benner, you'll put that on to Ken for
I'm
me?
doing it right now. As we speak, I'm sending Ken a message.
Make sure Ken stay, because they're saying new products not being delivered there, so they clean up, when the cleanup starts, make sure we're on top of it, making sure it's completed.
And I think just a quick message to be probably communicated to our contact over there at Newcastle is the fact that I believe there may be vehicles and trucks that are going to the old location, maybe possibly in error, not maybe knowing that they had moved. So that might need to be addressed as well.
All right, I'll let him know.
Okay, any other public comment, Joe?
That's it.
Okay, we're going to close public comment. Other board, other business. We'll go to,
I would just add that in addition to, Russ, obviously, you're making Ken aware. I'll notify the mayor as well, and we'll make sure that Mr. and Mrs. Grace get an update from either Ken or the mayor in the next couple of days.
All right.
Once all the information is gathered.
and then they'll pass that on to council. Thank you. Mr. Tokmasian.
Just two items. With the announcement with the mayor, I just wanted to send my condolences. And then just a point of business. I wanted to just bring up the building and planning services. Now that I know we're back full time, I would imagine we're still behind in terms of workload with COVID and so forth. Ross or Quentin, maybe you can kind of fill us in a little bit on that.
Yeah, I could tell you probably 4 weeks ago, there was a lot of permit activity. I know Quentin and I have both been working on the permits. And Quentin, I don't know, maybe we're all in the same, we're probably like a week behind, maybe if that. There's only maybe 10 or 12 permits right now in the queue for May. So we've been, I know from our point in reviewing the permits that we review, we've been able to really get through those. And I know we put an effort together, and like I said, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, we must have approved 150 permits. I mean, the permit activity has just been incredible. I've never seen it that way this spring since I've worked here.
Yeah, no, and I understand. I do recognize the activity has been higher. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, and we just
people are home; they're not going on vacation. No, and we're hearing that the ETA that's being communicated is still 3-4 weeks out plus. And I recognize we're trying to provide some type of buffer, but I mean, I guess my point more so, Russ, is that do we need to think about, and kind of already answer my question, but do we need to think about maybe even bringing in some temporary help?
Well, Ken, I think they just hired a new clerk down in that office. Is it Lisa, Quentin?
Yes.
Yeah, Lisa just started there last week. So from that point of view, they have now an additional clerk there to help process that. And I think they want to kind of see how that works out to start to promise a little bit quicker speed as she's brought on. I mean, she's new, she has to be brought up to speed. And like I said, from Quentin in my point of view, we've even increased hours as much as we can to even speed up that process. So we're aware of it, and I'll mention that to Ken too. And maybe that message just being communicated can change a little bit.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm just, whatever, and I'm sure the other four council guys on the call tonight will agree that whatever support you need, we're willing to do it as much as possible.
Okay.
That's all I had. Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Sloan?
I'd like to first, send my condolences to the mayor on the loss of his son. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in council chambers next month. That should be a nice change of pace for us to actually get together in there. I'm also very excited that we are now live streaming our meetings starting tonight, so the public can go to the township's YouTube page to stream our meetings. And then I want to wish everybody a happy and a safe Memorial Day. We'll have the parade on Monday on Memorial Day down along Route 13. I would just ask that everybody take a moment to reflect that, the true meaning of this holiday is to honor our military personnel who died in the line of duty, and let's not forget that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. Mr. Knowles?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Polari. Yeah, I certainly would like to send the mayor and his entire family my condolences on the loss of their son. We'll certainly keep him in our prayers. Yeah, the Memorial Day parade, we're looking forward to it. It's more fun than talking about cell towers, that's for sure. But we're going to be at the Memorial Day parade. It was a good decision to move forward with it. It ended up being a good decision. I wanted to also thank the mayor and the administration that the VFW was struggling with the flags along Bristol Pike with the flag holders were getting worn out on the post, and the flags were getting hard, and the guys were getting a little older that were running down there with trucks and putting them up. So the mayor jumped on that and got new flag holders, got them installed with new flags, and it looks beautiful on the gas lamps along Andalusia. The flags are already installed and ready to go, and it looks real nice. Hopefully, we'll get good weather, and like Mr. Sloan said, it's to honor our fallen heroes. We honor all veterans, on Veterans Day and every day, but it's our fallen heroes, those who have given up their lives for our country. So we're looking forward to Memorial Day, and be safe and enjoy yourself. And hopefully we keep getting better with this COVID. We're excited to go back in person next month and move forward here. Thanks a lot. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. Mr. Kisselbeck?
Thank you, Mr. President. I first of all like to say that, as many of you know, on April the 11th, I had lost my wife, Kathy. She had succumbed to cancer, and the sympathy and condolences that were expressed to myself and my family is greatly appreciated by all of us in my family. So I'd like to personally thank all of you for helping me get through that terrible time of my life. I would ask that we would all keep the mayor and Mary DiGirolamo in our prayers. As was mentioned a moment ago several times, the mayor and Mary have lost their son, and it's very difficult that your child should go before you. And so I'm sure they're contending with that at this time, and I can only express my deepest sympathy to them at this tragic time. I'd also like to mention that, as mentioned a moment ago, on Monday at 10 a.m., that's when the parade starts down Bristol Pike from the Suzuki Center all the way down to the end of Bristol Pike. Many of us walk it, and some of us get an opportunity to shake hands and meet the people. And as Jesse had said, Mr. Knowles, Joey had said also that this is the memorial for those who had given their life, and we can only express our deepest sympathy to their families, and to protect us and give their lives for our life, liberty, and the pursuit of our happiness. So God bless everyone. Hopefully we'll see you on Memorial Day. And once again, on behalf of my family, thank you so much for everything you've done for me at this time of my life. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Kisselbeck. Mr. Pizzo?
I can only echo the sentiments that all of you have expressed in condolences to the mayor and to Mary on on the passing of their son, Joe. I know it's hit them both very hard, and so please keep them in your prayers. Along with the announcement of the Memorial Day Parade, also another event will start before our next council meeting, and that is the start of the summer concert series at the amphitheater. With the relaxing of restrictions, tickets are now being sold online and will also be sold, I believe, on the evening of the event at the ticket offices here at the amphitheater. The first concert will be Wednesday, June 2nd, and it is a 70s flashback. So we didn't get to have the concert series last summer, but it is resuming. Again, tickets are on sale, and hopefully it'll be a nice night, and everybody will be able to get out and get together again. All of the information on the concerts are on the township webpage and on the township Facebook page. The mayor also had the opportunity to announce between our last meeting and tonight that Pride Day will be back. The Township Fall Festival, it will be in October this year. Plans are underway. It's about a year's worth of planning to get Pride Day accomplished, and so the decision was made and the plans are underway, so mark your calendars for that first Saturday in October. And with that, our next meeting, by the way, is Flag Day, June 14, so it's a holiday that's not celebrated quite as often as others, or acknowledged as much as others, but it's an important holiday as well, and that'll be our next meeting, June 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. And my condolences to the mayor and Mary on their loss. One of the hardest things I imagine is a parent burying their child, something that is probably one of the hardest things to ever deal with, and we'll be there for him, keep the family in our prayers, and we're starting to get our township back to somewhat of normal. Concerts, fall festival, opening up our meetings to the public, which has been long overdue. We will follow the guidelines of the state. If they put the restrictions back on, then we'll cross that path when we come to it. But right now, it's nice to be able to get ourselves back together, get together with our community members, and be able to have our meetings in public. So on that, the next meeting is scheduled for June 14th. Ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yes.